What God showed me about Charlie Kirk will shock you. Listen closely, because this is not just about a man, a leader, or a movement. It is about a divine revelation that will stir your heart and force you to see how God raises up certain voices in the world for purposes far beyond human imagination. I must speak with urgency, because the moment you hear what I'm about to share, something inside you will awaken. You will see that when God marks a person, when God appoints a messenger for an hour of darkness, nothing on earth can silence that voice. What God showed me is not meant to flatter, not meant to entertain, but to shake us into understanding how the hand of God moves among us. God opened my eyes to see that Charlie Kirk is not simply a figure of politics, culture, or debate. No, what I saw was the deeper reason why he stands so boldly, why he speaks so strongly, why he refuses to bow to the pressures of a world that seeks to silence truth. God revealed that he is an example of how one person yielded to the convictions placed in their soul can become a vessel of awakening. God showed me that the world may mislabel him, mock him, or misunderstand him, but that is the very sign of divine calling. When God selects a person to speak truth, they will always be resisted, because truth shakes the comfortable lies of the world. And as I look deeper, God impressed upon me this truth. Many are waiting for permission to stand boldly in their faith, in their beliefs, in their convictions. But God sometimes points to a man like Charlie Kirk as a living signpost. A signpost not of perfection, not of flawless character, but of courage in the face of storms. God is saying through his example, if one voice can pierce the darkness, how much more could an army of awakened souls do? That is the shock. It is not just about him, but about what God is trying to show through him. God revealed that his boldness is not accidental, but strategic. It is not arrogance. It is the courage that flows when you know the truth is not yours, but God's. I saw that God uses people like Charlie Kirk to awaken the timid, to challenge the silent, to provoke the fearful into asking, why am I quiet when he is loud? Why am I hidden when he is unafraid? God is showing us that courage is contagious, and when one person dares to rise, it compels others to find their voice. But here is the deeper shock. God also showed me that whenever he raises someone to speak, the attacks will be fierce. The louder the voice, the sharper the arrows, the clearer the truth, the darker the lies sent to destroy it. And what God is teaching us through this example is that when you stand for God's truth in any sphere, whether it be politics, family, business, or personal life, you must expect to be hated, resisted, and targeted. Yet God says, do not fear, for I will shield you. What God showed me about Charlie Kirk is not that he is beyond weakness, but that his weakness only magnifies God's strength. The storms he faces are not because he is wrong, but because he has dared to shine light into darkness. And then God pressed upon my spirit this undeniable reality. So many of you listening are hiding your own voice. You are shrinking when you should be rising. You are silencing yourself when God has put fire in your mouth. The shock is not simply what God revealed about him, but what it reveals about you. God is saying, if I can use him, I can use you. If I can give him courage, I can give you courage. If I can sustain him in the midst of fire, I can sustain you in your trial. God showed me that Charlie Kirk is a symbol, a reminder that God places people in culture not just to speak ideas, but to wage a spiritual war. This is not a political matter. It is a divine matter. It is not about ideology, but about spiritual authority. God raises certain voices to challenge lies that are meant to enslave humanity. And when those voices rise, all of hell trembles. Do you see now why the attacks come? Because when one person stands in God's truth, they become a mirror, reflecting what others are afraid to see. But let me take you deeper. God showed me that the shock is not in the man, but in the God who chooses the man. This is the mystery. God does not choose based on status, on age, on background, on wealth, or on fame. God chooses based on willingness. When a heart says, I will not compromise, God says, then I will use you. And when God uses you, you may not always be loved, but you will always be protected. The enemies may surround you, but God surrounds you more. The critics may rise, but God lifts you higher. What God showed me is this. The same spirit of courage you see in Charlie Kirk is not exclusive to him. It is available to you. God is saying, do not think that I only raise up a few. I am raising up a generation. But here is the tragedy. Many are refusing the call. Many are burying their voice. Many are watching from the sidelines while the world grows darker, waiting for someone else to rise. God is revealing through him that you no longer have the excuse of silence. You no longer have the excuse of fear. If one young man can stand boldly, then what excuse will you give when God asks why you hid? The revelation is this. God is calling you out of passivity. God is calling you out of compromise. God is calling you out of silence. And the shock is not in Charlie Kirk himself. The shock is in realizing that God wants to place the same fire in you. Do you feel it? You too are called to courage. You too are called to truth. You too are called to love boldly in a world that is collapsing under deception. And if you think this is impossible, if you think you are too small, too ordinary, hear the voice of God saying, I delight in using the ordinary to do the extraordinary. What shocks us about his choice is meant to shatter our excuses. God is not limited by your background, your education, your wealth, your connections, or your status. God looks for only one thing, a willing heart. And so my heart cries as I deliver this message to you. The time is short, the hour is urgent, and the call of God is loud. Do not waste your days living in silence. Do not waste your life bowing to fear. Do not bury the fire that God has placed inside you. Rise now with boldness, with conviction, with love, with unshakable faith in God alone. This is the lesson. This is the revelation. And this is the challenge that God has delivered through the example of Charlie Kirk. What God showed me about Charlie Kirk shook me, because it reminded me of how God has always worked with humanity. Throughout history, God has chosen people not because they were the strongest, the smartest, or the most impressive in the eyes of the world, but because they carried a heart willing to stand when others bowed. God takes what seems ordinary and breathes upon it until it becomes extraordinary. And when I looked at this, God whispered into my spirit, this is not about one man. This is about the pattern of how I move. This is about how I want to move in you. God showed me that courage is not born in comfort. It is born in conflict. You do not learn to be bold when the crowd agrees with you. You learn to be bold when the crowd despises you. You do not discover your faith when life is easy. You discover your faith when life demands it. Charlie Kirk is not standing because the path is smooth. He is standing because God has allowed the opposition to sharpen him. And here lies the revelation. When God raises you, he also raises your opposition. The harder the storm, the deeper your roots must go. The louder the critics, the clearer your conviction must be. God does not shield you from the fire. He strengthens you in the fire. And so God asked me to tell you this. Stop praying for an easy life. Stop begging for a path without resistance. Instead, pray for strength. Pray for courage. Pray for a heart that will not bend under pressure. Because God is not looking for people who survive comfort. He is looking for people who can thrive in conflict. And when he finds them, he elevates them as examples, as he has done with Charlie Kirk. The shock is not that a young man can be so bold. The shock is that so many of us have settled for silence while God is calling us to roar. God also revealed something about vision. When he gives a person a vision rooted in truth, it becomes unstoppable. A vision from God is not swayed by public opinion, not silenced by critics, not destroyed by setbacks. It carries divine momentum. And when I saw what God was doing, I realized that Charlie Kirk is not driven by ambition alone. He is driven by vision. And vision cannot be manufactured by men. It comes from God. Without vision, people wander in confusion, following trends, bowing to whatever is popular. But with vision, a person becomes unshakable because they are anchored to something beyond themselves. Music, God is asking you today, do you have a vision rooted in me, or are you drifting in the chaos of the world? Another truth God impressed upon me is this. When he raises someone to speak truth, it will always divide. Truth is like a sword. It cuts. It separates light from darkness, right from wrong, courage from cowardice. Do not be shocked when truth offends. Do not be surprised when truth disrupts. The purpose of truth is not to keep people comfortable. It is to confront lies that have enslaved them. And this is why many despise truth, because it demands change. And what God is showing us through the example of Charlie Kirk is that if you dare to speak truth, you must be prepared for division. But remember this, division is not failure. Division is evidence that truth has done its work. And here is the deeper wisdom. God uses opposition not only to test the messenger, but also to expose the hearts of the listeners. When a bold voice rises, people reveal who they really are by how they respond. Some will hate because their hearts are hardened. Some will awaken because their hearts are humble. The same truth that sets one person free will enrage another. And God is showing us that the presence of opposition is not the end of a message. It is the beginning of transformation. Without resistance, there is no refining. Without division, there is no clarity. Without challenge, there is no change. But God showed me something else, something even more shocking. He showed me that every generation has its appointed voices. But if the people ignore them, the consequence is not just personal, it is societal. When God sends truth and it is rejected, darkness spreads faster. Lies become laws. Evil becomes normalized. And soon a generation reaps the harvest of their rejection. This is why God raises people like Charlie Kirk, not to entertain, not to gather applause, but to warn. And if we dismiss the warning, we cannot escape the consequences. God is asking us all, will you listen or will you harden your heart? Beloved, God is not asking you to become a copy of someone else. He is not asking you to mimic Charlie Kirk. He is asking you to find your own voice rooted in your own calling. But the principle is the same: courage, conviction, faith, and obedience. What shocks us about his boldness is not meant to make us spectators. It is meant to make us participants. God is saying, I am calling you out of the shadows. I am calling you out of complacency. I am calling you out of silence. Rise up and speak what I have placed in you. Oh, God also reminded me of this unshakable truth. The world does not change through the majority. It changes through the remnant. History is never shaped by those who blend in, but by those who dare to stand out. One man who stands in truth outweighs 1,000 who remain silent. One woman who refuses to bow can shake an empire. And when God lifts up a voice like Charlie Kirk, he is showing you that one person truly can make a difference. Do not underestimate the power of one life surrendered to God. Do not underestimate the impact of one person who refuses to compromise. For it is not the size of the messenger that matters. It is the size of the God who stands behind them. And so the question God places before you is this: will you be silent or will you be bold? Will you bury your gift or will you release it? Will you fear the opinions of men or will you fear God alone? Do not waste your life living small. Do not waste your breath hiding truth. Do not let fear silence what God has commanded you to speak. For one day you will stand before God and he will ask you, what did you do with the voice I gave you? Did you use it or did you bury it? This is why God showed me what he did, not to elevate a man, but to awaken a people. Not to glorify a voice, but to stir many voices. Not to shock us with an example, but to provoke us into action. The message is clear. If God can raise one, he can raise you. If God can strengthen one, he can strengthen you. If God can use one, he can use you. The time for silence is over. The hour for compromise is gone. The season for passivity has ended. God is calling you, yes, to rise with conviction, to stand with courage, and to live with unshakable faith in him alone. And now I must leave you with the very heartbeat of what God showed me. Listen carefully. For these are not words to entertain your ears, but to pierce your soul. God has made it clear the world does not need more silent believers, more fearful dreamers, or more people waiting for someone else to rise. The world needs you. Yes, you who are listening right now, you may think you are too small, too unworthy, too ordinary, but God is saying, I created you for this exact moment. I place you here in this generation not to hide, but to shine. Do not underestimate the power of one life fully yielded to God. Do not underestimate what he can do. when you stop running from your calling and start running into his arms of strength. The courage you admire in others is the same courage God wants to deposit inside you. The boldness you applaud in another is the same boldness waiting to be awakened in your spirit. What God showed me about Charlie Kirk was not meant to make you a spectator. It was meant to awaken you to your own divine summons. The time for excuses is over. The time for compromise is gone. The time for hiding has ended. God is calling you to rise, to step forward with unshakable faith, to open your mouth without fear, and to walk into your destiny with fire in your soul. You are not here by accident. You are not alive by chance. God himself placed breath in your lungs for a purpose greater than yourself. So, I challenge you, do not leave this moment unchanged. Do not walk away and forget the stirring in your heart. Let this be the day you decide once and for all to live boldly, to live fearlessly, to live in full surrender to God's calling on your life. Stand when others bow, speak when others are silent, shine when others hide. For when you do, the world will know that God still raises voices, God still works through vessels, and God still calls ordinary people to carry extraordinary truth. Now the choice is yours. Will you bury your voice, or will you unleash it? Will you shrink in fear, or will you rise in faith? God is waiting for your answer. Step into the call, step into the fire, step into the destiny that has been waiting for you since the moment you were born. Live boldly for God and never look. When God chooses you for a divine purpose, one of the first things he does is separate you. This separation can feel painful, confusing, and even lonely. People you thought would stay forever begin to drift away. Opportunities that once looked promising suddenly disappear. You may start wondering if something is wrong with you, or if you've lost God's favor. But in truth, this separation is not rejection. It is preparation. It's one of the most misunderstood stages of spiritual growth, and yet it's one of the most important. When God is preparing a person for a destiny, he cannot allow them to remain where they are. He must move them out of their comfort zone and away from certain influences that could hinder their growth. Think of Abraham, God told him, "Leave your country, your relatives, and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you." Abraham had to step away from everything familiar before he could receive the blessing that was promised. Likewise, when God sets you apart, it's because where you are can no longer contain what he wants to do through you. Separation doesn't always mean physical distance. Sometimes God creates emotional or spiritual separation. The conversations that once interested you no longer do. The places that once felt comfortable now feel empty. You start desiring more of God's presence, more meaning, more purpose. That inner restlessness is the Holy Spirit pulling you out of ordinary life into a season of transformation. God is pruning you, stripping away the unnecessary so that your life can bear more fruit. It's natural to feel abandoned during this time. Even Jesus experienced separation. Before his public ministry began, the Spirit led him into the wilderness, a place of isolation. There he was tested, strengthened, and prepared for his mission. Notice that it was not Satan who led Jesus into the wilderness. It was the Spirit. Sometimes God himself leads you into seasons that feel empty, not because he has left you, but because he wants you to meet him there in a deeper way. When you are chosen, you cannot stay where everyone else is. The conversations you used to enjoy begin to drain you. The things you once tolerated start to disturb your spirit. That's a sign that God is changing your environment to fit your destiny. He's removing distractions and attachments that could delay your assignment. What feels like rejection from people is often redirection from God. He's saying, you cannot build what I've called you to build if you're still surrounded by what I've called you to leave. Sometimes the separation is painful because it involves relationships. Friends you trusted may turn away, or people may misunderstand you. But remember, not everyone can go where you're going. God will not allow certain people to accompany you into your next season because they're not equipped for it. Their role in your story has ended. You can love them, pray for them, but you must release them. If you try to hold on, you'll carry unnecessary weight into a place that requires freedom and faith. In the moment, separation feels like loss, but later you'll see it was grace. God was never taking something from you. He was making room for something greater. When He separates you, He's sanctifying you, setting you apart for holy use. You are not being isolated for punishment. You are being hidden for preparation. Like a seed planted in darkness, you may feel buried, but you are actually being positioned to bloom at the right time. So if you are in a season where you feel forgotten, rejected, or left behind, don't despair. You are not being left out. You are being called out. God is separating you from what was so He can connect you to what will be. Trust the process even when it hurts. The pain of separation is temporary, but the purpose behind it is eternal. And when the time is right, the same God who separated you will reveal you to the world, prepared, refined, and ready for the assignment He has destined you to fulfill. When God chooses you, He allows trials to become your training ground. These challenges are not punishments, but divine tools meant to shape your faith, patience, and endurance. Every great purpose requires preparation, and preparation often comes through pressure. God uses difficulties to strengthen the foundation of your spirit so that when blessings come, you can carry them with maturity and humility. In moments of testing, it's easy to question God's presence. You might wonder why things are falling apart even though you're praying and obeying. But remember, gold is only purified through fire. Without heat, impurities remain hidden. Likewise, God allows the fire of trials to reveal what needs refining inside you: fear, pride, doubt, or impatience. He is not trying to destroy you. He is developing you. Look at Joseph's life. Before he became a ruler in Egypt, he was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned. Yet through every trial, God was building wisdom, resilience, and leadership within him. What looked like suffering was actually preparation for his destiny. The same is true for you. Every hardship carries a hidden lesson. Pain teaches you compassion. Delays teach you trust. Loss teaches you gratitude. Through trials, you learn to depend on God more deeply, not on your own strength. Your tears become prayers, and your prayers become power. When you understand this, you stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "Prepare me." Because you realize that the fire you're walking through is producing something eternal. The chosen cannot skip the process. They must be proven in the furnace of faith. So don't curse your trials. They are God's classroom. And when you pass the test, you will step into a higher level of purpose, power, and divine favor. There are seasons when God becomes silent, not because He has forgotten you, but because He is teaching you to hear Him in a deeper way. When heaven feels quiet and your prayers seem unanswered, it's not absence, it's training. God's silence is never empty. It is His way of building your spiritual sensitivity, teaching you to recognize His voice beyond noise, emotion, or circumstance. In the early stages of faith, God often speaks clearly and frequently. But as you mature, He speaks differently. He wants you to trust His heart, even when His voice isn't loud. Silence is God's invitation to draw closer, to listen not just with your ears, but with your spirit. It's in stillness that revelation grows. The distractions fade and the inner voice of the Holy Spirit becomes clearer. During quiet seasons, many people feel forgotten or abandoned, but this is actually a sacred moment. Think of Elijah. He expected God in the wind, the earthquake, and the fire. But God's voice came in a gentle whisper. That whisper can only be heard when your heart is still. When everything outside goes silent, God begins to speak inside. Silence also tests your faith. Can you keep believing even when you can't feel Him? Can you trust His plan when He's not explaining it? Those who are chosen learn to walk by faith, not by sight or sound. So if you find yourself in a season of silence, don't panic. Stay faithful, stay in prayer, and keep your spirit quiet before Him. God is not punishing you. He's preparing you to hear with precision. When He finally speaks again, you'll realize the silence was never empty. It was the sound of heaven shaping your spirit to recognize His voice in every season. When God chooses you, He places a special burden in your heart, a deep compassion and sensitivity toward the pain of others. This is not weakness. It is evidence of your divine calling. You begin to feel what others feel, cry for what breaks God's heart, and carry a weight in your spirit that you can't easily explain. This burden is not meant to crush you, but to connect you to your purpose. It is God's way of saying, I am trusting you with a piece of my heart. Those who are chosen often feel emotions more deeply than others. You notice the suffering around you, people's struggles, loneliness, or injustice, and something inside you longs to help, to heal, to intercede. This is how God births ministries, visions, and missions. Before he gives you a platform, he gives you a burden. Before he sends you to lead, he trains your heart to love. Moses felt this burden when he saw his people enslaved. Nehemiah carried it when he wept over Jerusalem's broken walls. Jesus himself was moved with compassion wherever he went, healing the sick and feeding the hungry. The burden always precedes the blessing. At times you may wonder why your heart feels heavy, even when your own life seems fine. It's because you are spiritually sensitive to what heaven feels. You've been chosen to pray, to intercede, and to bring God's comfort into dark places. Never ignore this burden or try to escape it. Instead, take it to prayer. When you release that weight before God, he gives you the strength and wisdom to act. The chosen carry heaven's concerns on earth. Your compassion is your calling. And the burden you feel today is the birthplace of the miracles God will perform through you. When God chooses someone, opposition often increases. The enemy recognizes that your life carries power and potential, and anything with divine purpose always meets resistance. Challenges, criticism, and attacks are not signs that God has abandoned you. They are confirmations that you are on the right path. Opposition reveals that what you carry is important, influential, and capable of making a difference in the world. The chosen face obstacles that others may never understand. People may misunderstand your intentions, speak against you, or try to discourage you. Doors may seem closed and setbacks may feel endless, but these difficulties are not random. They are tests that refine your faith and strengthen your resolve. Each resistance you overcome becomes a proof of God's hand on your life. Even Jesus faced constant opposition during his ministry. The Pharisees questioned him, the people doubted him, and ultimately he was betrayed and persecuted. Yet, opposition never stopped his mission. It only highlighted the significance of his calling. Likewise, when you face resistance, it is often a signal that your assignment is powerful and impactful. Opposition also teaches resilience. It forces you to rely not on human support, but on God's strength. The greater the resistance, the greater the potential breakthrough. The trials and attacks become stepping stones, shaping your character, sharpening your discernment, and preparing you to handle greater responsibilities. Do not be discouraged when people challenge you or circumstances seem against you. Every struggle you encounter is a mark of your anointing. The enemy fears what God has placed within you, and resistance is evidence that your life is divinely significant. Stand firm, persevere in faith, and remember that those who are chosen are never defeated. They are refined, strengthened, and set apart for a destiny that opposition cannot stop. Resilience is one of the clearest marks of those God has chosen. Life will knock you down, disappoint you, and sometimes even break your heart. But the chosen rise again. They do not remain defeated because God's hand is always lifting them, even when they cannot see it. This ability to rise is not natural. It is cultivated through faith, perseverance, and a deep awareness of God's presence in every season. When you are chosen, setbacks are inevitable. Doors will close, plans will fail, and people may let you down. Yet what sets the chosen apart is their response. Instead of giving in to despair or bitterness, they turn back to God, trusting that He is still at work. Each time they rise, they grow stronger, wiser, and more prepared for what lies ahead. Their resilience is both a shield and a testimony of God's sustaining power. Consider Joseph, who was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison. By human standards, his life was a series of defeats. Yet Joseph rose again and again, trusting God's plan. Eventually, he stepped into his destiny, becoming a leader who saved nations. His story shows that resilience is more than enduring hardship. It is trusting God enough to continue walking forward despite adversity. Being resilient does not mean facing life alone. It means relying on God's strength, not your own. It means understanding that every fall is temporary and every challenge is an opportunity to grow. The chosen know that life's storms are refining them, not defining them. So, if you find yourself knocked down, remember this: your ability to rise is a sign that God has marked you for something greater. Your resilience proves that you are prepared, preserved, and destined to fulfill the purpose He has laid before you. No defeat is final. With God, you always rise again.